Live from WBBM-TV Chicago, Holt, McLennan, McFerrin, Volkman. This is Channel 2 News at 4:30.
And Lester, for families here in Chicago with loved ones still in South Florida, the worst part is the waiting and worrying. If you can't connect with someone caught in the storm, you need to call Chicago Salvation Army, which is America's command center for ham radio emergency services. We'll give you that phone number in just a moment, so get your pen and paper ready. First, the story of one Chicago woman who's reaching out to her husband in Florida. This long-distance call from South Florida is a very special one to Aida Riera. Her husband, Dr. Rogelio Riera, is phoning his wife in Chicago to tell her what happened when Hurricane Andrew hit near their retirement home in Key Biscayne.
We were frightened, especially about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because of the rush of the wind and the noise and the force of the wind. That was terrible and hitting the house.
Aida is no stranger to the horrors of living through a hurricane after growing up in Havana, Cuba.
When a hurricane is hitting, you hear the howling of the wind, which you will never forget.
The Rieras feel fortunate they can keep communicating and stop worrying. For thousands of people here in Chicago and across America, ham radios are the key to making a connection with loved ones caught in the storm.
WZ9H, WW9E.
In Chicago, Major Patrick McPherson heads up North America's Emergency Disaster Command Center.
The main benefit as far as amateur radio goes relates to the opportunity to go back into a disaster area and set up communications because everything is going to be down.
Within 20 minutes of any disaster, the Salvation Army sets up a network of ham radio amateurs. One of their jobs is linking loved ones. What's your biggest reward when you're helping people like this?
I think it's the feeling that you're doing something important, first of all. I personally like to see things come together and see a system work.
Tonight, this wife and mother says when disaster strikes, there's nothing more comforting than making a family connection.
Take care, stay well, and keep in touch. Love you.
And if you are trying to get in touch with a loved one in Florida, the Salvation Army's emergency services may be able to help you. You can call the Salvation Army here in Chicago, 312-725-1100. Again, 312-725-1100. Now, since phones are down in so many areas, the ham radio system may be your only hope of making a connection with family or friends you've been worried about in Florida.
Live from WBBM-TV Chicago, Curtis, McLennan, McFerrin, Baskerville. This is Channel 2 News at 10.
Sights and sounds like that create a lot of fear in the minds of Chicagoans with friends and relatives in the storm zone. With phone communication cut off in many areas hit by Hurricane Andrew, they are learning about their loved ones with the help of ham radio operators. Channel 2's John Duncanson is live in Chicago's northwest side with that part of the story. John?
Bill, around Chicago and across the country tonight, ham radio operators like Mike Deuce here are acting as communication links. The word over the radio tonight that we've been hearing is that telephone calls into the Miami area may be out for at least 4 days. So it's up to these people to provide that missing link between worried Chicagoans and their relatives and loved ones where the hurricane hit.
In a hot attic, Mike Deuce is scanning the heavens tonight, searching for a frequency that can allow him to become a vital messenger.
Go ahead, Chicago.
Yeah, I'm looking for information regarding any residents who have family in Florida.
Sitting in this tiny room, twisting frequency dials, he has a list of Chicagoans given him by the Salvation Army who want the latest on specific conditions in areas where loved ones may live.
In the Homestead area, everything from southwest 310th Street to 286th Street, including Hartford Square, were wiped out. All the homes are gone. Cutler Ridge, Monkey Island, all the homes are level.
What we're trying to do is establish health and welfare traffic. What that is establishing information for residents in Chicago who have relatives in Florida. Their phone lines are down. All normal communications are just not available.
Okay, and your phone number, ma'am?
The clearinghouse for all this comes through the Salvation Army Emergency Radio Network, where anxious Chicagoans call looking for any information concerning missing relatives in Florida.
Okay, the Whiskey Juliet come.
Those calls eventually reach about 400 ham radio operators like Mike Deuce, trying to make a connection deep into the air frequencies of the night, trying to act after the devastation of a hurricane more than 1,000 miles away as a bridge between the concerned and the afflicted.
I mean, we've been through similar disasters, but nothing in this scope. I mean, to look at it, it's awful, and we do what we can. You know, we just try and fill the gap for people that can't do anything at all.
Now, ham radio operators are telling us that because of sunspot activity, this is probably the worst time to make contact. Therefore, to them, it's the worst time to have a disaster. Let's just listen in for 1 second here, and you'll find out a little bit about what they're talking about.
We have Key Largo, anything on Key Largo, anything on Naples. Looking back through the list again, anything on Spring Hill.
Okay. No problem. Copy that?
Okay, obviously, they are making the connection. Those condition reports will be coming back here. People like Mike Deuce here, though, this job isn't over, even though the hurricane has gone through Miami, because now that it moves into the Gulf states, people like this will be making these connections over and over, making that missing link as the hurricane afflicts other areas in the South. Reporting live from Chicago, I'm John Duncanson. Let's go back to you, Adele.
All right, thank you, John.
Live from WBBM-TV Chicago, Curtis, McLennan, McFerrin, Baskerville. This is Channel 2 News at 10.
The hurricane has also knocked out communication to some coastal cities, and tonight, ham radio operators are the only means some Chicagoans have of contacting friends and relatives. Channel 2's Larry Minty is live with one ham radio operator who's trying to contact operators in the areas hardest hit, both in Louisiana and Florida. Larry?
Adele, certainly in times of disaster like Andrew, the only means of communications are ham radios with all the telephone lines out. Pat Deuce, who is behind me on the northwest side, she lives on the northwest side, is the coordinator in Chicago for the Salvation Army Team Emergency Radio Network. She has been working throughout the night, reaching out to people in the affected areas. Right now on the line, there is a gentleman named Ernie who is in Monroe, Louisiana, where many of the evacuees are going. Pat, can we get contact with him and ask him what's going on there?
K5GHK, K5GHK, WZ9H, copy?
Yeah, Roger, WZ9HK5GHK, go ahead.
Okay, Ernie, stand by one. I wanted to know, have you talked to anyone from the affected area in Monroe, Louisiana?
Monroe, Louisiana is not in the affected area at this time. However, a lot of evacuees are here from Morgan City, which is in the path of the hurricane down there, Pat. And there's about 20 people here in my home here in Monroe, Louisiana, to get away from the storm here. The storm is expected to move inland within the next couple of hours and probably pass over or near Morgan City, Louisiana, where most of these people are from. Here, Pat, over.
Okay, Ernie, did I understand you correctly? You've got 20 people in your home from the affected area?
That is Roger. That is Roger.
Pat, if you can ask him what they're telling him.
Stand by. What are they telling you about the area that they just came from? What kind of things are they telling you, Ernie?
Well, it's really not anything that they know of. They're here trying to gather information from the affected areas down there. We're about 200 miles from Morgan City, and we're just trying to get information from that area there, which, according to the information that we have, is that it is heavy rain and high winds at this time in the Morgan City area, is what we've been told here, where these people are from their homes down there. And they're very concerned about their homes and livestock and some of the other people that stayed behind. And from all indications is that the storm is slowing down somewhat, which will prolong the winds and rain and devastation in that area there. But
Okay, we're going to pull away now from Pat and Ernie as he talks about the evacuees that have traveled a couple of 100 miles to get up from Morgan City up to Monroe, Louisiana, in the northern part of the state. These types of conversations have been going on throughout the night, not only in Chicago, but across the country, as ham radio volunteers try to get word to the affected areas from and to loved ones. In a disaster, the best come out in people, and you're seeing one of them behind me. Reporting live from the Northwest Side, Larry Menti, Channel 2 News.
Channel 5 WMAQ-TV, Chicago. Now, live from the NBC Tower, this is the Channel 5 News at 5.
When this kind of disaster strikes, relief organizations like the Salvation Army go to work. As Channel 5's Robin George reports, the organization is helping Chicagoans track down loved ones.
I've never been so scared in my life.
Since Hurricane Andrew hit Florida yesterday morning, Rosetta Richmond has been a wreck. Her daughter Toby is in Miami, a sophomore at Florida Memorial College. Toby and the other students took shelter in a nearby church, but it wasn't until 10:30 this morning that Richmond heard her daughter's voice.
They gave me the call, and I said, "Hi, Mom." I said, "Oh, Toby." I was so happy to hear from her.
When she couldn't locate her daughter, Richmond called the Salvation Army in Chicago for help. She spoke to Captain Ray Dolliver.
What we try to offer is a listening ear to gather the information along with a little bit of understanding, knowing that their relatives are somewhere. They just need a little bit of patience to find them.
This is where all the phone calls pour into the Salvation Army. There have been hundreds already. And the counselors here then pass the information they have on to ham radio operators, who in turn try to help locate the families in the affected area. Diane Blevin has volunteered to take calls because she knows what it's like to worry about loved ones. Her home is in the Florida Keys. She's stranded in Chicago and just had to do something to help.
I had called yesterday and put my name in with my family's names to see if they could contact anyone. I still haven't heard anything, so then I thought, well, I'd rather just be here.
Through ham radio operators, the information is immediate. For Rosetta Richmond, the relief has come none too early.
And I told her how scared I was. And I told her I wanted to come home because it's too far.
Robin George, Channel 5 News.
This is Eyewitness News with John Drury and Diane Burns, Steve Deschler with weather, Jim Rose on sports, and the Eyewitness News team.
Diane, for people in the Chicago area trying to find out what's happened to loved ones or to property in Florida can be next to impossible. Kathy Brock tells us ham radio is helping to provide a vital link where telephone lines are no longer in operation.
Diane Blevin was vacationing in Chicago when Hurricane Andrew hit. She lives in South Florida. She doesn't know if she has a home or where her family is.
It was just so frustrating. I was calling every half hour to every hour all day yesterday trying to reach anyone. I tried to remember every phone number of everyone I knew in the Keys, and you just can't get through.
Calls from people like Diane are flooding the Illinois Salvation Army. Since South Florida phones are down, one of the only ways to communicate is through the amateur ham radio system. The Salvation Army is a coordination point.
We have about 300 pieces of traffic or messages to deliver to the affected areas right now. Beyond that, in the nation, there are thousands of calls to the Florida area and thousands of operators actually trying to see if they can get information from that back to relatives and friends.
When the Salvation Army is asked to locate people in the disaster area, it assigns those names to local ham operators to track. One of the places those names is passed on to is the Amateur Radio Club here at the DeVry Institute. They have been in contact with some of the operators in southern Florida.
All these people are okay.
And we've got about 30 or 40 requests for information for people in the Keys. So we've been able to get back to their families here and say, damage in the Keys is minimal and there are no reported fatalities. That's not the same thing as saying your brother's okay.
But for anxious families, any information is welcome at this point.
When phone lines are down, when the electricity is down, there's not really much you can do, and you have to have something you can turn to, and that's where ham radio really plays an important part.
And the Salvation Army says its volunteer operators do even more than just search the airwaves. In past disasters, operators in stricken areas have actually gone house to house, locating the people they've been assigned to find. In Chicago, Kathy Brock, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
And people who need information on friends and family in South Florida can contact the Salvation Army in Chicago at area code 312-725-2222. 1100.
This is Eyewitness News with John Drury and Marianne Childers, Steve Deschler with weather, Tim Weigel on sports, and the Eyewitness News team. This is Eyewitness News.
Many Chicagoans are desperately trying to reach loved ones who were in Florida when the hurricane hit there. Against great odds, a Southside woman got through to her sister in one of the worst hit areas. Paul Meinke has this story.
Hello. Josephine Stewart has good reason to be concerned. Her mother, 5 sisters, and 3 brothers live in Homestead, Florida. This is Homestead, mauled by Hurricane Andrew. Many here are now homeless, their possessions lost. Homestead is about 25 miles southwest of Miami. It's home to Homestead Air Force Base, which was extensively damaged. Josephine was on the phone with her sister Gwen in Homestead when Andrew hit. Gwen was providing almost a play-by-play as the roof blew off her house.
And when the roof just went off, I assumed, then the phone went dead, and I just assumed that she went with the roof, and everything caved in.
Gwen and her 2 daughters survived, and incredibly, so did her phone. And tonight, after quite a few tries, Josephine was able to talk to her sister again.
So you all still don't have no food or no nothing?
Oh, then they got a curfew, and we had to ask the man to let us go to Mama's house to get something to eat. And he told us we had better hurry up and get down there and come back.
Josephine's sister is now left with a shell of a house and little else, though she does have her life. While Josephine Stewart and her family have a lot to be worried about, at least she was able to get through, and the same can't be said for many other people.
I was calling every half hour to every hour all day yesterday, trying to reach anyone. I tried to remember every phone number of everyone I knew in the Keys, and you just can't get through.
Diane Blevin was on vacation here in Chicago when Andrew hit. She can't find out what's happened to her home or family. There are, of course, many others like Diane trying to find out what's happened to loved ones. With most phones out in southern Florida, they've turned to the Salvation Army and its emergency ham radio network called Saturn. Pat Deuce will be on the radio most of the night from her home on Chicago's northwest side. She and other ham operators are trying to get information on behalf of some 400 Chicago area residents who have relatives in the hurricane-ravaged area.
The problem is that the ham operators are evacuated as well from the affected areas, so they have to have time to get back in and set up their equipment.
Meanwhile, Josephine Stewart can only hope that help will move in fast. Her daughter, Katina, hopes the storm will dissipate soon. She's due to leave this week for college in New Orleans. Paul Meinke, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
This is Chicago's Midday News.
Another story about Hurricane Andrew. It has made communicating exceptionally difficult. Lines of up to 50 people deep are reported in some sections of southern Florida today. Lines of people waiting to use payphones. Many people from the Chicago area with family and friends along the Florida coast have not gotten in touch with them. Some are resorting to ham radio operators to help get in touch, as Mary Gannon reports.
We have some good news regarding Homestead.
Anxious callers are flooding phone lines at Red Cross headquarters in Chicago. Distressed with their own inability to reach relatives down in Florida, they're turning to someone else for help.
At a certain point, when the emergency phase of the disaster is over, we will go and look for those people. However, this usually doesn't happen for the first 48 to 72 hours of the disaster, because our first responsibility is to make sure that these people's emergency immediate needs are taken care of.
Another way of tracking down loved ones in Florida comes via shortwave radio. Ham operators are having great success in getting information about those caught in the path of Hurricane Andrew.
I have 2 requests for information, one in the Cutler Ridge and one in Kendall, both of which are around Miami.
Bill Davidson, a volunteer with the Salvation Army, is one of many ham operators using the facilities at the DeVry Institute of Technology. Their aim, to help relay messages between a long list of frantic relatives and possible victims of Andrew.
Ham operators have a global sense of community. When we had the problem at Plainfield here, ham operators in Florida were sending stuff up to help us out. Today we have the opposite. People up here want to know if their people down in Florida are okay. But it's very satisfying to be part of that larger community through the radio. That's part of what the hobby is all about, I think.
And that hobby even allowed Davidson to tell one happy couple that their wedding could go on as planned down in the Keys off the coast of Florida this weekend. Phone service is dead down there, but apparently romance is not. Mary Gannon, WGN News.